Coogs house. Is it basketball season yet?
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, daily podcast all about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Appreciate you making us your first listen each and every day. If you don't join the conversation but don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below what's more important, the chip or the dip. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. More on that fun and exciting things that got going on over there later. But today, on Friday, September 27th, there's a Freudian slip there. We are officially a month out of Houston Cougar basketball playing games. Kind of. Exhibition game, I know. But it's still tough opponent. I want to talk about the schedule that is now out as you're listening to this for the 2024-25 basketball season. Completely finished, Big 12 games included. I want to talk about the potential future backcourt and how it may be the greatest backcourt the school's ever seen, at least on paper. But first, I want to talk about one half of that potential backcourt who is visiting Houston this weekend. That is one Kingston Flemings. Now, Kingston Flemings is a San Antonio product, 6'2", seen him weigh anywhere between 160 and 170, point guard. And he is incredible. He is truly, truly special. I guess this one listing has him at 6'3", actually. Composite 5-star everywhere you look. Some people have him as the #1 player in Texas. Some people have him as the #1 point guard in America. Everywhere you look, he is the highest of highly talented at everything. Okay. He is visiting Houston this weekend. Kingston Fleming is on his official visit with the men's basketball program. And it reportedly is coming down to Houston as one of the finalists in his potential, where he's going to go to college. Houston, Texas Tech are the final two. Arkansas has made a late push here, and they actually technically, I guess, have a later visit date. A lot of his timeline's been pushed back. He represents the United States in a 3x3 or 3-on-3, 3x3, whatever you want to call it, basketball tournament for under 18, the under 18 team through FIBA, which again, he's one of the best players in America playing. Anyway, incredibly talented, 6'2", long arms. He is a point guard, and he's a point guard in not because Derrick Rose just retired, but in the Derrick Rose sense. Incredibly explosive athlete, attacks the rim with violence, a competitive defender that doesn't want anyone to score ever. He's not a conceding baskets kind of guard. Meets guys at the rim, again, crazy vertical leap, good length and extension. Again, it appears as a rising senior in high school. I guess he's in school at this point. He hadn't played much basketball for the school yet. That the kid's a future pro. And I don't say that lightly about 6'2" guards. It's incredibly hard to play point guard in the NBA. It feels like there's no reason this guy can't. And he's incredible. He's really talented. And he visits this weekend. And obviously, seeing the school culture, meeting the staff, meeting the guys is going to be important. He also is visiting the campus this weekend with Houston as a very high-ranked school. And as far as his options go, it's one of the ones that he's really, really interested in. As much as Houston, as much interest as Houston has in him, it feels like he's reciprocating that interest very, very strongly. From my understanding, it feels like people are because of how well he fits the culture, it appears, pretty high on the realistic possibility that Kingston Flemings could commit in the next couple weeks after this visit. It feels like a great match. Again, a hyper-competitive kid with crazy athletic ability would come in as one of the best, most talented guards as an 18-year-old, as a true freshman to ever come into the program. Obviously, Jamal Shed just did his thing last year, dominating college basketball as best guard in America. Marcus Sash the year before, Grimes as well. You could go back to Rob Gray. I understand that they've had good guards. That's not what I'm saying. Those guys all took development, right? Jamal Shed, for as talented as he is, Samson and Jamal would tell you themselves to a person, right, that it took a lot of work. He did not come in. He came in with the drive, the intangibles. It took a lot of effort to get him where he got. That's credit to Jamal for doing it. Credit to staff for guiding that effort, right? Um, Kingston comes in so much higher than all those guys as a true freshman, right? Obviously, he sees what Houston's done with turning those guys into pros, right? Navigating those guys and helping those guys find their way to become their best selves as basketball players. And that for him is a sky is the limit kind of thing, right? He also, for its worth, has a sister that plays high level high school basketball as well. And so I have no official reporting on this. She's a Division I basketball player. She's looking at a lot of the same schools. And so my inkling is to think that the family appears very tight knit. Again, the kind of cultural fit that fits in with what Houston's trying to do under Sampson. I mean, Sampson's kids run the program beneath him, right? Kellen helps coach. Lauren runs the PR and all the HR and all the stuff behind the scenes, and there's frankly a lot more jobs that shouldn't have the title for. It's a family affair, right? This family seems very tight knit as well. I wonder if there's any sort of kind of deal where Bella Flemings, his sister, who again is also a Division I basketball player, she's that kind of good. Could there be something there? I don't know. She's also like on her own Instagram kind of stuff, been to Houston, done the visit, taken the pictures before, etc. And I don't mean this. It's harder to find information as far as who's top what on people's lists in women's college basketball outside of the top 50 players in a given class. Like the woman from Lubbock, Aaliyah Chavez, her top 10 list is crazy because she's like the next big thing, right? But outside of the top, whatever, it's really hard to find what people have as their lists or their priorities and whatnot. I don't mean to say that they're a package deal, but I do think in understanding what is Kingston Flemings, it's hard to not look at like a guy with what seems to be a very great family around him and a sister that's very talented as well, right? And so I'm excited to talk about Kingston Flemings and the Houston Cougar uniform in the future whenever that commitment happens. Obviously, these things are fickle. High school athletes can change their mind on a whim, but he's a perfect fit in a lot of ways. And one aspect of that fit is actually his potential fellow backcourt mate, Isaiah Harwell, who committed a few weeks ago. Now, Isaiah is a dominant two guard, a true shooting guard. And when he committed, there are a lot of people saying, well, this means Kingston Flemings is going elsewhere, right? And that does not have to be the case by any stretch. They're truly, definitionally, two separate kinds of guards. And I want to talk, I guess this is going to be now the second segment. I'll talk for a second about how those two guys could fit together, and what they could do if they got together to play basketball for the Houston Cougars, which I'm really thinking there's a good chance of. But first, before we get too much farther into all of that, we got to talk to you about our buddies at Robinhood, because with Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn a very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rates may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. Parker Ainsworth here, Locked On Cougs, talking about Kingston Fleming visiting this weekend. And he is a talented point guard, number one point guard in the nation in some people's opinion. He is also the number one player in Texas in other people's opinion, a lot more people's opinion. He's a top-ranked guy, 6'2", 6'3", point guard out of San Antonio. He looks to join a talented 2025 class, one that includes Isaiah Harwell. Now, we went and we talked about Isaiah Harwell back when he committed. Isaiah comes from, I guess, originally Idaho, uh, currently plays at Wasatch Academy in Utah, and he was heavily recruited by Gonzaga, by Houston. Some other big blue bloods got in there by the end. Harwell committed to Houston is earlier in September, and kind of shook the world and did that. The number one ranked shooting guard in America on a number of different sites, a 5-star plus prospect, and that is to say that he is at least a 5-star on every ranking site out there, right? And when Isaiah committed, the thought to a lot of people at the cover recruiting was, well, this means Kingston's going to go somewhere else because Kingston has kind of had Houston one of his top choices for a while. Big guard like Isaiah comes in. What does that mean? But their games actually pair up well. And with Kingston coming in this weekend, not that he's ever going to listen or hear this, I kind of want to stress that because I don't think that that's being reported enough here. Isaiah Harwell is also a great athlete, and he's coming off an injury his junior year, but appears to have fully recovered. And Isaiah Harwell comes in at 6'5", long arms, strong, explosive guy himself. But the way that they score the basketball, both Kingston and Isaiah Harwell, is dramatically different. Isaiah is a shooter, and I mean like a shooter. I mean, he is lighting it up from the outside. Movement without the basketball is great, even after the injury. Like, he is really, really a talented scorer of the ball in a true shooting guard sense. That is to say that he can be the focal point of your movements and actions without being the focal point of your offense, right? He does not have to be the guy that has the ball in his hands for 30 seconds at a time or 28 of the 30-second shot clock to score and dominate a basketball game. He gets his buckets every way possible. Both guys score a lot of points. I don't mean to say that Kingston's going to defer, but you're going to see a lot of assists if these two guys both come. And Isaiah, it sounds like, is coming, right? He committed. If Kingston joins him, you're going to see a lot of assists from Kingston Flemings and driving and kicking to Harwell on different actions, right? The reason that's going to happen is because Kingston Flemings is as dominant a driver of the basketball as anyone in America in the 2025 class. When he gets downhill with the head of steam, it is, I don't care who you put under, it's a dunk. I don't care who you put under there. It's going through the basket, right? It might be an and one dunk because you put someone there that's going to try and block the shot like a dummy, but it's going to be a dunk. And there are different ways to get him going downhill, screens and stuff. And that's really been more Brennan. As far as that, San Antonio Brennan's gone in the playoffs recently. That's really been more their problem. It is like, obviously, that you need more than just one guy the farther you get in UIL. But they fit pretty well together because of that, like yin and yang, right? The explosive athlete downhill of Flemings will pair very well with Isaiah Harwell on the wing, coming off movement. You add some flare screens, add some back screens, add some basic movements that they already kind of do with the pro style offense that Kelvin runs, and suddenly you're looking at guys both getting up a lot of shots and putting an incredible amount of stress on a defense. And we haven't talked about the guys currently on the roster, right? We haven't talked about a Mercy Miller, Chase McCarty, two very highly touted guys that are freshmen on this year's team, would be sophomores on next year's team with Kingston and Isaiah. We're not talking about, like, does Emmanuel Sharp come back, right? Terrence Arsenal has been on pro draft boards as a potential second-round pick since before he got to Houston with a good year. Is he back or not, right? Like those kinds of things. We didn't talk about who's going to be around them because we don't necessarily know. But if Kingston and Isaiah come together, they're an incredibly dominant pair that gets on the floor right away. I mentioned this in the Kingston segment earlier, but Isaiah is also the kind of guy that people looking at as like he might be in college 10 months. And as Houston ascends into this kind of a high achieving program, we saw Jarris Walker come through. I don't mean to say we've never seen it happen, but those kind of guys are going to stop through more and more often. Doesn't make them less Cougars. I think that makes them very dominant Cougars so much so they went to the pros. But that's part of the game with these kind of athletes is they're good enough to come in and play right away, even in a Kelvin Sampson program, as Jarris did. And then, they end up going pro. You got to replace them. But I think that, frankly, this kind of backcourt would show off the program in a way that guards could start recruiting themselves. We've seen this program turn guards out to the league at an incredibly high clip, even since its rebuilding days, right? Galen Robinson just got a pro deal again the other day, right? So he's moving on up out of the G League and out of China, stuff like that. He's into the official NBA. Congrats again to Galen, by the way. I guess I tweeted it out, but for signing with the New Orleans Pelicans. But he wasn't, he was highly touted for Houston at the time, but he wasn't as highly touted a recruit as Kingston or Isaiah are. Jamal Shed certainly wasn't. Marcus Asher certainly wasn't. But those guys came to Houston with the right attitude and culture and turned into pros. Isaiah and Kingston can come in and do it together. They can push each other at practice and then go win together in Fertitta. It feels too good to be true in a lot of ways. But I don't like this idea that they can't fit on offense together because they both want to score a lot. When truthfully, the ways they score pair up very, very well. And for what it's worth, the way this pair really works, and the way this pair really works with Sampson, is on the defensive end where they both are dogs, right? Like they both get after it. They both put constant pressure on the ball. The guy they're covering is never comfortable. The ball is always getting tipped and tapped and poked and reached at, and it's always constantly making offensive players retreat. Constant pressure. They're marking the other team's best guy. It's very Sampson-like. It's very intense. Now, full disclosure, Sampson has strategic, schematic things where he doesn't cover out beyond, I think it's 35 feet roughly. And high school teams will press full court. And so it's just a little bit different, right? Nuances happen. When you watch them play, it's the kind of defensive intensity we've grown accustomed to watching for a decade of Cougar basketball at this point, right? And I think that that's why these guys are so exciting because they're not just 5 stars. 5 stars are unbelievable. This program is like in the running for multiple years, it feels like. And frankly, the 2025 class could have more. We haven't talked about front court guys yet. Look out, right? But 5-star guys that have that kind of buy-in on that end. 5-star guys that come in with a work first, talk later mentality. 5-star. What made Jarris so great, and I talked about it when he officially declared he was going pro, because it is monumental that Sampson found a first 5-star guy for his pro, one and done, a true one and done since before he came to Houston. Everyone knew it kind of guy, like Jarris was, to come in and like take the coaching. A lot of times, and it's not abnormal, it's not immoral or anything like that, but a lot of times an 18-year-old kid that knows he's a pro and is only on campus for, like I said, 10 months or whatever it is, comes in and doesn't, the coaching is like, okay, but I'm not here that long. Why, like, let me get my buckets, let me hit my weight room sessions, I'll get my highlights, we'll get out of here, right? And there have been Michael Beasley, right? There have been high-end players with high successful single-year careers that do that. And Sampson showed that we're going to find 5-star guys that aren't that. And now he's got Isaiah Harwell committed, and he's got Kingston Flemings visiting this weekend. Guys that are not that. I just want to show up and get my year and get out. They're hardworking development. The attitude is all part of what fits them into Houston Cougar culture. And I think it could very much project to one of the best backcourts. If Isaiah's committed, if Kingston commits, it could be the best backcourt to ever come through this university. It might be brief. There might be pros very soon, but it could be the best backcourt to ever come through the university. And that's including, at one point we had Jamal Said and Marcus Sasser, and those guys were both in the NBA now. They were upperclassmen, so it's a little different. But I think this backcourt, if they both came, I guess I should say, I think it's got that kind of potential. And call me crazy, call me, the guy always looking at youth, because I love the way that the youth basketball growth develop the next, the future. But I think it's possible. I want to talk more about the basketball schedule for the more immediate future, the 2024-25. I think some first initial thoughts on that. But first, I mentioned that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, and NFL fans can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So if you're watching football on a Sunday and you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can go check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the same page that you're placing your bets on. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, win, lose, tie, draw, when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Parker Angel, Locked on Coogs here, talking about Houston Cougar basketball as we are 1 month out from a exhibition game. I keep wanting to say scrimmage, an exhibition game against Texas A&M. We've had the non-conference schedule in our hands for a while now, but the conference slate came out on Thursday afternoon. Houston opens up Big 12 conference play. I guess technically, I keep wanting to say the 2025 part of the schedule, but I guess technically they open on December 30th, 2024 in Stillwater, Oklahoma, with the Oklahoma State Cowboys. I still think of them like the Eddie Sutton program and like being really strong. I do think they're going to be better than they were a year ago. That's the way Houston opens up Big 12 play. Houston then turns around and hosts a very different looking BYU program. Some rapid growth in that basketball program. The international side of it's really taken off. That could be a challenging game in Fertitta to open up the home stretch of Big 12 play. Then a couple days later, they host TCU. That was a tough road trip last year. It's in Fertitta this year. Then up Kansas State. Crazy roster turnaround at Kansas State this year. Tang has built something there. Then hosting West Virginia, out to UCF, hosting Utah, and some back and forth. Utah, we did play a year ago, so a little familiar, even though they weren't in the conference yet. Those games are not as challenging as the ones preceding them, but again, Big 12 conference, there's no off games, so I don't want to say that they're easy games. There's not as challenging as the ones before them. Then Houston heads to Lawrence, Kansas for revenge on what might have been one of the most, certainly the most embarrassing regular season loss last season. Houston heads up there again late January 25th, and what ought to be I'm sure, ESPN top everything game. Houston then heads from there straight to Morgantown for the 29th, then back to Fertitta to host Tech on February 1st. They then host Oklahoma State on February 4th. Then on the 8th, they head out to Boulder to play Colorado, host Baylor on the 10th, out to Arizona, Tucson for Arizona on the 15th, Arizona State on the 18th. They then host Iowa State on the 22nd, head out to Lubbock on the 24th, back in Fertitta for March 1st with Cincinnati, March 3rd with Kansas, and wrap it up, the regular season that is, March 8th in Waco. Now, I don't know if you're a math person or not. I know I open this with I teach history. But if you count the exhibition game against A&M, Houston plays 9 different programs currently ranked in the preseason AP Top 25. And of those programs, they play Kansas twice, right? They play, I believe it's Baylor twice. They play at Arizona, right? This is an incredibly challenging schedule, especially when you factor in that the non-conference features Auburn, Alabama, and Rutgers. When you count that A&M's, if you want to say scrimmage, exhibition game, this is as tough a test as you could possibly draw up. I understand there's criticism about Houston's non-conference schedule from a handful of folks, really. It's not even that many anymore at this point, right? And talking about like, well, look at what UConn's doing and look at what Carolina's doing. And they get invited to a couple more showcasey kind of things in November. And really, the exception of like 2 or 3 teams, I look at the schedule top to bottom, and you look at the Big 12 slate, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is why you cannot add more of those gauntlet type games to the pre-conference season, right? This is an incredibly difficult slate, and I want to stress that going from playing Baylor and Fertitta on February 10th to Arizona by February 15th is a tough, tough turnaround. Hosting Iowa State on the 22nd and then going to Lubbock on the 24th, regardless of knowing what stage McCaslin's rebuild is up in Lubbock at that point, that's an impossible pace to play. Houston got out of there with a win last year, but it is raucous. That is a tough, tough turnaround, right? A couple of those throughout the schedule earlier as well. But as I look at this, it's a fun schedule for a fan. You play some of the best teams in America. You get Kansas home and home. You get Baylor home and home. And that game was an overtime game last year. How much fun was that? How much fun was it to beat Kansas by 30, whatever it was, at the end of the regular season? You get both of those games, both of those matchups. You get to see Utah and BYU come through. You hadn't gotten to see those teams in Houston yet. If you're a road trip traveler, you get to go out and spend a week in Arizona because you play Arizona and Arizona State in the same week out there. The 15th and 18th, I haven't checked what days of the week they are yet, but within a week of each other out there. Get to go see Boulder, Colorado as well. So that's you're visiting 3 of the 4 new schools. And then frankly, obviously you went to BYU a year ago. And so I guess that BYU and University of Utah are in exactly the same place, but you've seen that region of the world. So you're seeing the new ones, right? A really, really well put together schedule for a fan. For a basketball coach, not that Kelvin Sampson isn't ready for it or anything like that. This is challenging. This is tough. A lot of the best games have short times between them. A lot of the best teams, I should say, the toughest games have short times between them. That's a lot of staff scouting, behind the scenes work that goes into all that, getting that pulled off well. I still think Houston's got to, going to win this conference in the regular season. Obviously, the conference tournament's kind of a crapshoot. Who's healthy, who's not, etc. How many games you got to play in a row and all that. That Houston ran out of gas in it last year after winning the regular season title. I think that is more because of how talented they are, though. I don't know what schedule to put out here that would have made me think anything else. I think there are probably 3 or 4 losses on the schedule. I'm betting it's probably more like 3 than 4. But I'd imagine, even as talented as Houston is, that a fully healthy Houston roster still gets through this with a couple losses. That being said, I don't see more than a couple. I think Houston is that good, is that well prepared for this. We'll obviously break down each matchup before and after here, Locked on Cougs. And I don't know, as we get to basketball, you guys know me, I'm a basketball guy. As we close the basketball season, we'll break that kind of stuff down as well. And we may go, pair by pair, week by week. I don't know how we want to get into this more and more, but the season schedule is out. Get your tickets now. It is exciting. It's an exciting time to be a fan of Houston Cougar basketball. Thank you all so much for listening to a second episode of Locked on Cougs today. Locked on Cougs is a proud member of Locked on Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Go Cougs.